Okay, good to go. Hey everyone, it's James here from Durban, South Africa, and I'll be the first presenter in room one. And so, just firstly to introduce myself, I'm the co-founder of a startup called AdvantageLearn.com, and what we aim to do is we aim to bring quality education to South Africans at a basic education level, which is high school and below, by leveraging educational technologies. So we've got quite a big issue here in South Africa, whereby a lot of our students don't get access to high quality educators, and that's essentially why we exist. We try to leverage producing our educators and offering them online so that students can get access to some of the best educators. We're focusing mainly on the STEM subjects for now, which is your math, science, etc. And so, yeah, that's what we do. We've been running for about 3.5 years now, so we're still very new, but we've had some great learnings along the way. One of which is moving or learning Moodle firstly, and then making the movement to WordPress. So I hope that everyone can hear me clearly, and I'm going to dive right into the topic of my talk, which is from Moodle to WordPress and what we learned and why we moved. So a couple of details. If you want to get in touch with me, my Twitter handle is @JamesTrevorLees, and you can drop me a mail as well at james@advantagelearn.com, or you can read some of my thoughts, etc. on jamestrevorlees.me. So let's dive right into the session. As I said, our goal is to enable quality African education, predominantly at a basic education level, by increasing access to quality educators and material through EdTech. So we started out first offering in-person maths courses to students in the Durban area in South Africa. And once we'd been running it for a period of time, we thought to ourselves, how could we make our in-person courses better and more scalable by going online? And this forced us to start thinking about how best we take what we have in terms of our content and get it to our students through some kind of web technology or educational technology. And so we started investigating, and then we found out, well, we got to know this whole concept of a learning management system, and we thought we really need an LMS. So we started looking for one. And our first reaction was to go to the market and say, well, surely there's service providers that can offer us a decent solution at rates that we can afford. And so we started looking. We investigated a number of solutions, most of which were originally from the United States. Things like Blackboard Learn. There's a South African agency here. We talked to them, and we started getting a whole lot of quotes in. Now, the trouble with that was we were a startup. We were running pretty lean in terms of our revenue lines and what we had to invest in our business. And the quotes that we were getting were sometimes maybe twice or three times what our revenue line at the time was. And so it was just so unaffordable. It was too expensive. There weren't that many providers that we really felt comfortable with. And we also knew that because we are based in South Africa, we have a unique problem that we need to solve with our learners. And we found that some of those solutions were too restrictive. They didn't offer much customization. And if we did want to customize, then it would cost us too much. And so we really had a problem of trying to find a learning management system that would allow us the flexibility at a relatively inexpensive cost, so that we could just trial this whole blended learning and online learning with our students. So then we thought, well, this is seeming a bit hard. There's quite a big barrier to entry, and we started to have our doubts, and we said, well, maybe we can't actually go online right now. Maybe we need to wait until the costs come down. Maybe this is just a little too difficult for us to do. thankfully, we've got a pretty committed team, and a co-founder, Chris Muller, started investigating solutions along with myself, and we looked into finding other possibilities of doing it ourselves. And this is when we found Moodle. So we stumbled on Moodle and we started looking into it, and we were not, we had very little tech background at the time, hardly any coding experience. And we found Moodle, and we found this amazing community, and we said, well, geez, this looks pretty doable. We think we can actually do this ourselves. So we did. We threw a Moodle instance up on Google Cloud Platform. We were blown away at how fast and how easy it was to get an instance up and running. We literally had one up and running within 2 days, and within a week we had started to customize the look and feel of the instance, and started playing around with it, putting in our course materials and building courses on Moodle. And we were absolutely blown away. We were converts towards Moodle straight away, and yeah, we were just really excited. So then we started getting to know Moodle. We started diving into running and managing blended courses with all of our current students, getting good experience in what we could and couldn't do on Moodle. And this slide that I've got on the screen now is basically how one of our first courses looked like. We tried to make it look as pretty as we could at the time, with our low experience. And as you can see, for those of you who know Moodle, that's a classic kind of Moodle environment with a customized theme running on top of it, which we had put on top. And yeah, we were really excited. We thought that, you know, this is great. We can leverage this for both our classroom management in our blended courses. When we say blended courses, we mean courses that mix both online content and physical, in-person, classroom-based teaching or instruction. And yeah, we started really utilizing this environment. And we used it. We used it for about 12 to 14 months. And over that time, we obviously had, because we did it ourselves, we had to learn quite a lot of lessons, and we had to learn how to do a lot of things. So we became relatively experienced with Moodle. And so what I did for this talk was just split out into the main pros and cons that we found over those 12 to 14 months when we used Moodle and what we learned. So firstly, the pros for Moodle. Now, this session is not about bashing Moodle. Moodle is a very robust and a very, very powerful learning management system. And it would be really, really wrong to go out and say that it's not one of the best learning management systems there is. It most definitely is. If Moodle is used in the right niche, it is extremely powerful. But one of the things that I'm going to go through is why we changed and why we moved to utilizing WordPress and the pros and cons there. So for us, in terms of Moodle, the first thing that was a massive pro was it actually was relatively easy to set up. Not as easy as WordPress, sure, but it was relatively easy. I mean, two guys with no deep tech experience set it up in 2 days and got it all configured and running. So that's a massive pro. It is extremely feature rich to a fault. The features on Moodle are extensive and deep. There are nested features within nested features within nested features, which, although it's a massive pro to have all of those features, it is quite overwhelming to run a Moodle instance with that amount of features and that amount of nested features. There is little need for extensions. A lot of what you need with Moodle for your basic learning management system is out the box. And although there are lots of extensions, there's not many, if you're using it very simply, that you need to go and add on. It is seriously powerful at classroom management. So actual classroom management with your learners. It has very strong cohort management, which is super helpful, managing cohorts of students that are moving through courses, that are moving through your different parts of your learning management system. It is very settings heavy, which means you can customize and tweak a lot just via the actual dashboard. If you know where you're going, it's quite difficult sometimes to find where those settings are, but if you do find them, you can change them. There are powerful permission settings. You can change a lot of the user roles and control a lot of what people can and can't do on your Moodle instance. And then we learned that learner tracking was included by default, which was a super helpful thing for reporting. And there were bucket loads of community docs. Really, there was a lot to filter through and use, but it was super helpful. And the quiz features were really great. So all in all, the pros that we found from Moodle were actually quite positive. And we were using it, we thought, quite well for a period of time. But then we started running into challenges. And the challenges that we started running into, and the cons that we found, was firstly, we just started finding Moodle, the more we used it, to be quite clunky. And it's hard to explain without you actually diving in and using a Moodle instance in comparison to a WordPress instance. But for those of you who have, I'm sure that you'll lay testament to this. There's a lot to do. Things in Moodle can be quite difficult at times, and the environment is quite clunky even for the student, unless you invest some pretty solid time and effort into some pretty deep customizations to make it a bit easier. So that's the first con, and we learned that, and we tried our best to make it a bit easier, but we then started hitting ceilings of what we could do. We then realized that we had a very unique challenge at that point in time with our learners, and that was that most of our learners we expected would be learning their digital content on their mobiles. We're dealing with students who are teenagers, who have access to mobile devices at their schools, and probably more easily than actual desktops, etc. So we started thinking, well, we've got a problem with this because we can try and make this Moodle instance respond better, but it really isn't built to be mobile centered. And so that was quite a significant learning that we found. Massive con, and even though it's a pro, it is probably one of the biggest things that we learned as we went through it. There are just so many features that it can get overwhelming, and to remember the paths to change things, you almost need to build your own handbook. And we actually had to start doing that with Moodle. The developer documents were okay, but to be honest, the user documents were better than the developer docs. And we ran into some issues there where we couldn't find the information that we really needed to be able to change the things that we really wanted to. The admin platform on Moodle is pretty complicated, and it doesn't, unfortunately, in my personal opinion, unless you do invest some effort into customizing these workflows, it doesn't really empower the teachers and coordinators. They can do things, but it can be quite tricky at times. And a lot of training has to go into it. Whereas if the user interface was a bit more intuitive, it would be a lot simpler for those key users to actually do things and change things on the learning management system, which is a very important factor of using a learning management system. You need your teachers and your course coordinators to be able to change the content quite easily on the environment without having to have a web admin or do the changes. The look and feel customization is quite tricky. It's not as straightforward across the board as a WordPress instance is, and so that's a challenge. And one of the key things that we ran into was the difference between making content available publicly outside of course rooms versus the private content. And it was quite a big stumbling block for us. We needed to deliver content both to users that were not in our courses, as a kind of broadening our audience for the content that we had, but also then to control some content privately, and the various different types that would go between public content and private content. And so that was a big con. We then learned some hard lessons with regards to scale. We were running, obviously, as I said, a Google Cloud Platform instance, and we had some pretty challenging times with users and scaling our actual Moodle instance and making sure that it's efficient and fast and the performance is good for our users. It took quite a lot of work at times, and it's definitely not as simple as a WordPress instance in that regard. And the customizing was quite costly, and this was the main reason that we started to think hard about moving from Moodle to another solution. And we didn't know at the time what solution we would move on to. And the customizing that we needed to make was, we had a growing number of courses that needed an e-commerce aspect to it. And so we started trying to bolt on e-commerce with Moodle and look into how we could enable e-commerce with Moodle. And we started running into problems, and it was seeming to be quite tricky, to the point where we were actually engaging with a development agency that would then help us go into this new learning market, where we wanted to sell our online courses, we wanted to sell our blended courses, and we wanted to sell our in-person courses, so that we could scale our organization a bit quicker. And so we went to this development agency and we said, well, we need to integrate Magento with Moodle. That's what we want to do. Magento is a very powerful e-commerce platform, as most of you, I'm sure, will know, and we already have a Moodle instance. So surely if we integrate the two, then we can take our courses online. And we started writing a business requirements document to get out the logic that we needed. And 60 pages later, we had our solution, kind of the first phase of our solution outlined. And this was to take Magento and integrate it with Moodle so we could sell our courses to our customers. And then we started running into delays. Our development agency, as good as they were, started to find trouble in knowing how to scope and spec this integration easily. There weren't many options out there to just bolt on e-commerce onto Moodle at the time, and for those that did exist, they didn't give us a good sense of comfort with being able to use their solution on top of our Moodle instance. We also then saw our project timelines start to just increase and increase. We also started having doubts. Is this the right way to go? Surely we should just maybe not do e-commerce and rather do a manual ordering system and just carry on the way that we've been doing it in the past. And the costs, the quotes were starting to rack up. So what happened? Well, the result was we didn't actually have a plan. We had done this massive business requirements document. We'd realized that it was pretty complicated to integrate these two seamlessly and run it efficiently without the costs getting too high. So thankfully, we went to a conference in Cape Town and had a very serendipitous conversation with Maddie Cohen, who is the product lead at WooCommerce. And he said to us, have you thought about using Sensei with WooCommerce? So we went to this conference and we came home, and the first thing that we did was we dived in and looked at Sensei, and we dived in and looked at WooCommerce and the integration between Sensei and WooCommerce, and what the features were and how they could be used. And we had the same experience as we did with when we first found Moodle. It was just mind-blowing. We realized the extent to which what existed on a platform that we already actually knew. We were already running a couple of sites on WordPress and pushing content out there. And quite literally going from almost feeling hopeless with regards to our click to pay to learn solution. We call it click to pay to learn, where a customer can purchase a course and enroll automatically. We then had hope. And a couple of weeks later, we launched our minimum viable product. And that was our AdvantageLearn.com. It was .coza at the time, version 1. And this was a WordPress site with WooCommerce, and we called it kind of 1.0, with WooCommerce enabled, with Sensei enabled, and running a theme on top of that. And so we had a very basic site, and within 2 days we had our first order running through with the first enrollment automatically into our the course that we were there selling at the time. And it just showed the power of what existed on WordPress all the way through the chain, from e-commerce to public content to learning management. It just kind of highlighted it for us, and we just were converts immediately. Whereas before, we were kind of looking at Moodle and saying, how can we keep Moodle as our learning management system, but bolt on a whole lot of environments and other systems around it. And yeah, we ran that instance 1.0 for a couple of months, and then we started building our confidence on WordPress, and we started releasing our next version, obviously making it better, and we've just managed to improve as we go along. We also then started looking into the way that the courses were structured and how they were being delivered online on our WordPress instance, AdvantageLearn.com. And so I've just taken a couple of snapshots of the environment and giving dashboards to learners on highlighting the courses, enabling the sale. Reviews is something we bolted on. We chose Sensei at the time as our plugin to run our learning management system on WordPress. And one of the challenges we had there was Sensei didn't have extendable modules. So you could build your course in modules, but it would not collapse and extend. And so Chris, our tech lead, just quickly whipped up an extension to do that for us, and we were able to extend or expand and contract the modules, which is a seemingly simple thing, but it's really important from a usability perspective for the learners, and that we contributed to the community. So it just showed how quickly we could customize the LMS by adding on extensions, whereas before it really seemed quite difficult with Moodle. Yeah, and we've been running that instance now for 20 months. 20 months about. We've put through 4,300 orders through WooCommerce, and of those, the courses that have been purchased is almost close on 7,000. We've got 2,800 participant learners, and we're delivering quite vast amount of content quite quickly. I'm actually sitting in our studio right now, where our educators produce some of their videos, and it's all on the back of a very, very small team. And we honestly believe that is because of what we've been given from the WordPress community. The way that we've been given such a valuable big system, even though we're utilizing some proprietary plugins like Sensei from WooCommerce, it really is a really affordable and effective way to deliver online learning to your learners, whether they are customers or whether they are just learners in a higher education institution. And now we're even going further into this, and we're starting to be able to customize our environment a lot more. And we're moving on to now a third instance of our environment and improving it. into the future, and that's our version 3, using some pretty clever templating plugins and systems that that Chris is leading. And yeah, we're starting to be able to be a lot more flexible with our environment from the front end and the learning management system, through just utilizing the core architecture that has been built already and delivering it in a clever way. So what did we learn about WordPress, Sensei, and WooCommerce over the past 20 months? I felt it was only fair to share the pros and cons of what we've learned in the WordPress space over the time as well. So to start off again with the pros, firstly, again, very easy to set up, easier than Moodle. In fact, it's the e-commerce, the click to pay to learn, the e-commerce integration to the LMS is pretty easy if you choose the right setup or right mix of plugins and extensions. Customization is most definitely a lot easier. It's from the backend LMS customization all the way through to the front end appearance and the look and feel, a lot easier. It gives you all the WordPress web experience, and that's a massive pro. I mean, WordPress is so large and so vast, and the community is so large. There's just so much that comes with it, more than Moodle. Moodle is very specialist in terms of the learning management system, but WordPress comes as a very experienced content management system. And to us, this was a key learning in the change from Moodle to WordPress. We realized that running a learning management system is not only about doing learning management, it's about doing content management well. And in my opinion, well, in our opinion, there's no better platform that does content management at this point in time than WordPress. And that was super powerful and a super big learning for us. So we then realized that before we were running a website, we were running a Moodle instance, and they were all different systems. Now, once we had put our WordPress instance together with all of the different parts, it was one place for management, one place for adding content, everything in one area, which brings massive efficiencies, obviously. Being mobile centered is as easy as choosing the right theme and putting the right parts in place. Obviously, it takes work, but it was a lot easier than what we were trying to do on the Moodle environment. The flexibility in design and the abundance of compatible solutions that we found was superb. One of the best ones that we actually found was the Events Calendar Pro plugin by Modern Tribe, and it was such a great way for us to retail in-person courses, and that was one of the most challenging things. We had online courses plus in-person courses plus courses with both online and so we call them blended, and in-person components, and being able to actually sell those products easily is not as easy as one would expect. So onto the cons. There's a couple there. It's obviously there's one more pro, social by nature. So onto the cons. Not as many LMS features as Moodle. So there's definitely a lot more features on Moodle than there is on WordPress LMS plugins right now. Yeah, so there's a lot that still needs to be built in this area, but I know that it will probably come quite soon. There's only a handful of WordPress LMSs that are really making good ground, in our opinion. Learn, Sensei, WP Courseware, etc. there's a handful of them. Some LMS solutions are very theme heavy, which can create some downstream customization issues. And this is a learning that we had. You just got to be careful when your LMS is based heavily into your theme, because when you want to customize, there's obviously functionalities that are built deep into your WordPress theme. And unfortunately, there currently is no leading community-driven LMS, which is where Moodle wins. Like I said, Sensei is proprietary, LearnDash proprietary, WP Courseware proprietary. So it's not as open in terms of people contributing to it. That is it. I thought that one of the most effective things for this was for you guys to ask me some questions. So as you can see we've had a long journey from Moodle to WordPress and utilizing it, and we've used WordPress quite extensively in terms of the makeup between e-commerce and courses. So yeah, it's over to the floor now. Let me try and see what questions have been posted, and I'm open and available to questions now. Thanks very much. Any questions? So I see the first one is, I would like to know if you've had any background making WordPress as an LMS in an accessibility compliant environment. So Daniel, and unfortunately from my side, I don't have a background in making it, or in making an accessibility compliant environment. However, we as an organization are very mindful of that. And so what we have been trying to do over time is ensure that when we are putting our features together and when we are delivering content, we are being mindful of the accessibility compliance. It takes a lot of work, but it is definitely worth it. So unfortunately, I don't have any deep background in it, but we are very mindful of it, and it is something, in my opinion, that everyone should be very mindful of. Pleasure. Yeah, so Frank, thanks for your question. We still do use Sensei. The reason why we are still running Sensei is obviously because of its deep links into WooCommerce, being a WooCommerce backed feature, or own feature. And yeah, and a lot of the reasons why we actually utilizing Sensei at the moment is we've got a nice close relationship with the WooCommerce team, and we're trying to develop that a bit more and contribute back to that plugin based on what we actually need from it, and what we could give back to the community. So it enables us to be actually quite flexible with what could actually be maintained in like a core part of the plugin, and it enables us to contribute that back to the WooCommerce guys. Also, what Sensei has got some pretty robust features, and those features have been built well from a development perspective, because it has got the experience of WooCommerce behind them. It comes from WooCommerce now, obviously incorporated into Automatic, so we know that they built properly. So yeah, developer friendly for sure. Also, when you're using things like Timber and Twig to do your customizations for your theme, if you are a developer, Frank, then you can pull in a lot of those features of Sensei quite quickly, and it becomes like an architecture of your data and your functionality on the LMS behind you. So it's really nice, and we support it quite a lot. But the others are very good as well. We did quite a lot of work with Zach Gordon on his environment for his course that he's done his JavaScript for WordPress, and we worked on another LMS, and we're impressed by it too. Cool. How many people on the development team for this project? It's completely in-house. We worked on it in-house. We've actually only just started leveraging some outside developers through Codable quite recently, and that's just to kind of add on a bit of capacity for ourselves. But yeah, Chris Muller, he's in the forum there. He leads the charge, and we have currently got 3 developers in-house, so not many. And yeah, it was 2 for a very long time. How easy was the transition from Moodle to WordPress for your end users? A lot easier than we expected. Just purely based on the out-of-the-box look and feel that came with it. As I mentioned earlier, it was quite clunky from the Moodle perspective, and so our end users, our learners, found it a lot easier. Our teachers and instructors found it a lot easier because there's not as many nested additions on the WordPress environment, and everything is quite easy to navigate. But funny enough, one of the users, the set or the subset of users that didn't find the transition easy, and this was quite a big learning for us, quite a big negative learning, in fact, moving from Moodle to WordPress, was the grading facilities. The grading facilities on the various WordPress extensions, LMS extensions, are not nearly as strong as Moodle, Laurie. So it's just something to be very, very mindful of. You can build the grading functionalities on top because WordPress is so customizable, and most of those plugins are really helpful and developer friendly. But our subset of users, being our parents or what we call our learner stakeholders, they didn't get the kind of reporting and tracking that they had on Moodle before. And that was quite a challenging change for us. We didn't, some of our users, our like parents of our students, were not that happy with certain aspects of it because they weren't getting what they had before. And obviously we're trying to correct that over time. Yeah. Any other questions? I hope I'm answering them okay. Great. Well, if there isn't any other questions, I'll be happy to obviously take questions at any time. So you can just fire them over to me. I'll just bring up my details again quickly so that you can see it. I'll pull it back to my first slide now. And yeah, we obviously have got a lot of experience in this, but we still are learning a lot. So we as we journey with WordPress, we look back on Moodle and we really are grateful for what Moodle gave us, but we're really excited about the future of LMSs on WordPress because of the broadness of the solution that WordPress brings, from public content to private content to just so much. There's just so much. And so I really thank you for your time. Thanks very much to the WPCampus team for giving me the opportunity to share here. And yeah, I just wish everyone the best of luck with their learning management systems. But yeah, drop me a line, tag me on Twitter if you've got any questions. Yeah, I'll be around. I see there's one last question that slipped in there from Daniel, so I'll answer it before I wrap up. How did we end up figuring out grading? We are still figuring it out in that we are adding features and features and innovations to our grade books. We do hope to consolidate our grade book that we are putting together and release it to the community at some point in time. But the grading can be quite organization specific. But yeah, Daniel, just work at it, leverage the plugin, build off the plugins, and you'll be able to get your grading together quite quickly. There is good features already, but not as broad as Moodle. So thanks everyone. Have a good day. Thanks WPCampus, and yeah, I'll catch you all online. Cheers.